All right, guys, today I need you to turn to page 6 in your packet. Today we're going to be graphing. So in your notes, we're actually going to talk about how to sketch. But in your assignment today, you're actually going to be looking at a graph and matching it up with the equation. So you kind of have to know how to get the graph from the equation in order to be successful today. So when we are graphing, these are the steps that you need to follow. Step 1, you need to make sure that the equation is written in slope-intercept form. You guys did an amazing job with that last week. So we're going to continue that today a little bit. The second thing is that we are going to graph the y-intercept, which we're actually going to first identify what the slopes and the y-intercepts are on these, and then we'll kind of go from there. But you always start with the y-intercept. It's the b value of your equation. So b stands for begin, so that is where you begin. Next thing is you use your slope to find the next point. Your slope is the m, which is in front of the x, and that's how you move. So the b is where you begin, the m is where you move. Once you move, you create another point, and then you are sketching your graph. So if we take a look at number 1 here, we have the equation, and this is already in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form, just as a reminder, is y equals mx plus b. M is your slope, b is your y-intercept. Those are the two major things for today. So if we take a look at number 1, zoom in a little bit. So we need to identify what is your slope, what is your y-intercept. This is already written in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Y is by itself. The y-intercept is what's ever being added or subtracted on the end. It's a plus 5, so it's a positive 5. Your m is the slope. That's what's in front of x. It's a negative. Whenever there's not a number written here, there's a 1. So your slope is -1. And if it's written as a whole number, or if there's no fraction, make it into a fraction by putting a 1 underneath. So now, to graph this, to sketch it, we're just sketching. You don't need rulers today. You start with the b, because this is where you begin. This is your y-intercept. So you go to 0, 0. The y-intercept is on the y-axis, and it's at 5. Positive, so you count up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put a dot. There's your y-intercept. So that's where we begin. Now we move -1 over +1. Your slope is rise over run. This number represents how much you move up and down. This number represents how much you move left or right. So from here, we move down 1, right 1. And you can do that a couple of times. Down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. Negative is, the -1 is going down. The +1 is going right. So then, once you have a couple of points, you're sketching. It does not have to be perfect. Connect the dots, and you're done. Let's look at a couple more. Number 2. So we need to figure out what is the m, what is the b, what is your slope, what is your y-intercept. Y-intercept is whatever is being added or subtracted on the end, so it's a -1. Your slope is whatever's in front of x. It's a -3, and it's just a -3, so put it over 1. You always start at b. This is where you begin. So you begin at -1 on the y-axis. So here's 0, 0. You go down to -1. That's where you begin. This is how you move. Remember, it's rise over run. So if it's -3, that means you go down. +1 means you move to the right. So we go down 3, right 1. And you really only need 2 points. So once I have that, I'm good to go, and then sketch it. So main thing for these is identify what's the slope, what's the y-intercept, and then you can plot your points. Let's look at maybe a couple more just so you can kind of see what's going on here. Number 3, again, identify the slope, identify the y-intercept from the equation. Your y-intercept is whatever's being added or subtracted on the end. That's a 2. Your slope is a 2/5. So you start at the b. This is where you begin. So you go up to 2. On the y-axis, put a dot. That's where you begin. Begin. M is your slope. 2 is positive, so that means you rise up 2. 5 is positive, you run to the right 5. So from here you go up 2, right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then sketch. One more just for good luck here. So let's take a look at number 4. So again, we're going to identify the slope, identify the y-intercept. Y-intercept is whatever's being added or subtracted on the end. Now your slope here, this negative sign, the negative can either go with the 1 or with the 4. It cannot go with both of them. If you have a -1 over a -4, that's a positive 1/4, and that's not what this is. So I always end up putting the negative sign up top with the whatever's up top, the 1 in this case. So we start with B. This is where we begin. So you go up to 3, 1, 2, 3, put a dot, and then your slope is -1 over 4. So negative, it says rise over run. So we rise, we actually don't rise, we go down 1 because it's negative. This is a positive number, so we go to the right 4. So you go down 1, right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So today what you're going to actually be doing, it is going to look a little different. Today, I don't want to show you all the answers, so I'm going to show you kind of what you're going to be doing here. So you're going to be given some graphs, and you're going to have to figure out, you're going to have to match from down below here. There's going to be some equations, and you're going to have to figure out which equation matches up to which graph. And the hard part is that some of these equations down below here, some of these, won't be used on every Google slide. So there will be some left over. Now, none of them will be used once. You're only going to use 3 per slide. And what's going to happen is once you submit these, I'm going to go and actually check your work. So you may not get actual feedback in class today, but I will be giving you feedback throughout the day. So if you submit it, I will be looking for it, and it will give me a notification that you've submitted it. But this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be matching which graph goes to which equation. So keep in mind the y-intercept and keep in mind the slope when you're doing that. So I'll be watching you guys, keeping an eye on it. Any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you shoot me an email because today you're not working in GoFormative.